Hey guys, so you got Rob the Project Master here. I'm going to be working on a deck today for the ATV, and I'll take you through as much of the process as possible so that way you get to see just basically how to mock something up and put it together, maybe find a useful tool that I use. I'm definitely a type of person that collects my tools one at a time as I work on projects. A lot of times I start cheap. But as I start using it and understanding what I like out of it, I try to then upgrade from there. So today we're going to start building the deck, and I'll go through the description or the details of how that works soon. But I just wanted to include you in the process. Forgive me, this is probably my fourth video, so I will do my best to make sure that it's relevant and easy to follow. On these machines, they don't really give you a lot of storage, so I have to figure out what I'm going to do with it. As you can see here, I got a lot of deck space that I have to lean out of, and it's causing some concern because if this thing's loaded up, I don't want it pulling on the plastics. So I'm going to weld up a bracket that mounts basically right here, and it's going to basically circle the whole bolt pattern there. Still give you access to the trunk, and hopefully if I can squeeze it off, I'm going to put a deck for a cooler, so that way I'm not taking up my trunk space with the cooler. You'll see as I go through the process, I'll put some time lapse and some video, try to explain as much as possible. For anybody who's tried to mount anything on these lock and load Polaris decks, it's quite a nightmare actually. You'll notice that they have these little, holes here, so right here, and it's very proprietary to Polaris. There are aftermarket options; those are expensive as well. But the thing I don't like about them is they either come in a hook variety or just a latch system. Which, in my book, what I need to do is be able to mount this box. So I'm going to have to find alternative ways. Actually, there's tricks, DIY. Tutorials on how to make these plugs, but I've now made 4 of them and they have failed every single time. So I would like to think that I'm a pretty good builder, but maybe I'm doing something wrong. The next step is I want to basically take this cooler. It's been a cooler I've had for a long time, so there's a lot of sentimental value. I want to be able to mount this cooler, if I can, at the bottom of that bracket. So what I did is I put together, here, let me get this out of the way. I put together a quick drawing of the back of my ATV. I marked the lights, the exhaust. It's not to scale, but it does the purpose. For anybody who works on projects, just as a quick tip, I just carry these little books, these composition books here. They're about $1 at Walmart. I use these to keep track and build all my projects, so that way later on if I want to rebuild something I can reference what I did and then improve upon that. But as you can see here, the black part here is, hopefully, I need to see what stock I have, but it should be a 1 inch to 1.5 inch tube pipe, rolled steel, so I can weld it. It's going to have the deck for the cooler right here, the mount for the trunk up here. Support beams are going to bolt right onto the back of the ATV, and I'll show you that in a moment. So let's show you what that looks like. So I'm going to have it follow this path roughly, and then the idea is that it's going to come out and create a bar that this thing can rest on, and then a box that basically is just open, so I can put a cooler in there and ratchet it down if I need to, or bunge it. And then this is the side profile, and again, I'm not an engineer, I just build a lot of projects, so I just kind of do this just to keep my head straight. So here's the rack support. This is actually a center beam, and then there'll be another beam that goes across, and then the cooler deck as well. And then I didn't, as you can tell, do alternate side profiles. It's just because as I build it I'm going to have to adjust, but wanted to share what I'm putting together.
Oh,
Okay, so far I did confirm it's a 1-inch pipe, something you can get at your local hardware store or steel store. I highly recommend going to the steel store. They'll come in any size that you want for the price of a 50-foot. Well, for a 50-foot piece, you will pay for about a 5-foot piece over at Home Depot. So just pro tip, I usually get them to give me 50 feet, and then I'll have them cut it down into 5-foot sections, so that way I can store it easy and keep it in the garage or in the shop, so that way it's not taking up too much space. The other pro tip is every steel store I've been to has been willing to cut down the pieces, so you just have to ask. Sometimes they charge for it. The one here in Albuquerque charges, I think it's like $1 a piece, so for a 14 gauge 1-inch pipe. And whereas you go to Home Depot, you spend about $15 for a 5-foot or 4-foot section. So anyhow, this is what I'm using for the build, and the reason why I decided for 1-inch is that I can still tap into it and make the mount, but it's not so heavy putting so much weight on the back when I already have things like a cooler and a trunk box that's going to be full of gear. So far in total materials, I'm expected to spend maybe $40, and that includes the weld material. And then in tools, I have an old Milwaukee chop saw. I go to estate sales and find quite a few tools that I can use and buy them for cheap. And as usual, you can always haggle there. So if you have cash and you're willing to haggle, you can get a good deal. It's really easy. You just measure out the metal. Again, you don't need a very big chop saw for these types of projects. So if you go down to Home Depot or Harbor Freight or wherever you go, a 10-inch wheel will be fine. I believe this is a 14-inch. So I've seen people use as small as an 8-inch. Before I got this piece of equipment, I actually was using a Dremel. It was time-consuming, a big pain in the ass, but it worked. So I didn't do these projects very often. Now, when I started building more, I wanted to invest into some of my gear, just like I'll invest in a better lens for this type of format. But I at least wanted to show you what I was doing. I always double check. The old adage is measure twice, cut once. So I tend to try to measure everything down to a perspective or a point that I'm not wasting a lot of material. Especially when you don't have a lot of space, you want to retain useful things. So I try to cut down on my scraps and get as much waste out of the build as possible. Safety is very important, so I not only have a good face mask with the auto dampening or darkening screens, as you can see. The always important thing to do before you even spark anything is you can get a lighter, put it right in front of it and see if it works. See how it darkens? And that's just to make sure that all the batteries, or this one's solar, but just make sure it's functioning before you put it on your head and strike the first bead, because nothing's more destructive to your eyes than the bright light of a welder. So before I go any further, I got this little Chicago electric welding unit over at Harbor Freight. I think it was $100, and it's a flux wire welder. The most important thing is this sucker will work on any 120 outlet. It's real simple operation. It's turn on. I don't know if you can hear the fan, but you can change the wire feed speed. I usually try to keep it around a 6. You could do minimum and maximum. I get the spool over at Home Depot or wherever I can get it. You want to stay consistent with the type of spool you use. As you can see, it's just real basic operation, and it tells you exactly what you need, what size. No, this thing's pretty easy to use. You control the tensioner right here. and it's just a feed. You just put it through the gun handle, through the cord, goes down to the gun handle, and it's pretty easy to use. The size of it, I can keep it in a garage. I can use it just about anywhere, and I can build pretty much anything. I wouldn't build a trailer with it, but I would. I've found that any welds I put together have held up just like a big boy, a big welder. So, okay, so I just welded little beads onto the pole, and it's just for mocking up. Like, that's not completely centered, but it's just to make sure that my measurements work before I go and put a full bead of weld on there. Something like that just takes a little hammer and you can knock it apart. You know, redo your weld if you need to. So it's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but since I'm not professional, I try to do it the way I know. So right now I just tacked everything down. I'll do a final weld when it gets closer to being done. But right now, this attaches. Let's see here. This side attaches to the ATV. This side sticks out. This is where the cooler is going to sit. I'll pre-drill some holes, put some eye bolts in it so I can put a latch or a bungee system on it. And that way it's super easy to use. The little Harbor Freight welder, and it's doing just a great job. So I will go back to time lapse. As you can see, it's pretty much built, so you'll kind of see how it all goes. This deck here, so there's a deck down here, that's for the cooler. This is up here's for the trunk. Let me show you how the cooler goes so you can see it. That's kind of how the cooler is going to go. And I made it a little bit bigger so that way if I get a new cooler or something else, I can still use it. So next is going to be painting. So I'm going to be doing the painting here in a moment. Basically what I did is I got a really cheap base matte paint from Lowe's, I believe it is. And once I put a coat on there, then I put a coat of Plastidip. And the reason why I use Plastidip is it's a little bit more rugged. It holds up a little bit better and it's easy to touch up. But you can really use anything you want. I just know it's going to get scratched, so I didn't want something that would just get eaten up on and then I would have to replace. So, but this is essentially the final product. I went ahead and drilled the holes, and I'll be mounting it here shortly. The whole point of this video is just to show you the different things you can do with like various tools you have. Ideas on how to get things to fit on your ATV that you don't have to go and DIY it and make it look like it's a DIY kit. Hopefully this one doesn't. I'll get little plugs for the ends eventually, but for now this is going to be it. So here's the bracket. I ended up having to use a 1/2-inch washer and then stack some washers to give it a little bit of space, just so that way it wasn't straight up against the plastics, but it's on there. I ended up using hex head 1/4 inch, 2-inch long, and then the bottom one's 3. Did require to have to remove the seat to take the glove box out because the bolt axis was really tight, but it worked. But as you can see, it's pretty much there. So the next one you'll see is with everything on it. So here's the final build of the bumper. I already ratcheted down, but one thing that the reason why I wanted to share this project with you is sometimes you just don't find what you're looking for out there, and I don't know, it's an experience, an adventure to build something, be proud of what you built, and as you can see, you know, it does yield things that you wouldn't necessarily find in a store. So again, this is the final result of the build. If you have any questions, feel free to share or comment, and I'll try to answer. But thanks again for following. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, all the things on the internet. Visit our website, www.yoroadventures.com. We do not only post blogs and videos, but we try to share maps for free of where we like to ride, so that way hopefully you can get out on some of the same trails and enjoy some of the same things, and hopefully we meet each other out on the trails. Hopefully our next ride in the next couple weeks is going to be out in Oklahoma, so if that doesn't work out, I'll find another place, but if it does, I'll definitely be sharing. Thanks again. Don't forget to follow us, and have a great day.